33 slides to go through, and then I threw them away. I'm a lot of prep, but I'm a rabbit trail guy, so I get to going and I go crazy, and I'm looking over here, reading something, over here, reading something, trying to put it together, and as of 9 o'clock last night, I said, forget this. It is so out of sorts, and I don't want to bring a bad product to a bunch of good people. So I've got 2 videos. One of them is a gentleman that I follow a lot, and he has a study on Psalm 127, which it'd be ridiculous not for you not to hear it. So we're going to watch that. It's about a 25-minute deal. And then in my rabbit trail search, I was wondering what Psalm 127 sounded like if sung by the Jewish people. So I was doing searches everywhere trying to find something. I did find something I thought was rather interesting. It's probably not the same song they sang on the way back to Jerusalem, but it's a variation of it. It might be a modern variation. We'll take a quick listen at that. If you didn't get a piece of paper, you should have the verses, 5 verses on there at the back. As we listen to this video, I'm going to ask that you please, it's going to trigger some questions. Please write those down, and we're going to discuss them after the video. Okay? Got it, sir? Here we go.
Psalm 127 is the 8th in the series of 15 songs of ascents. Therefore, when you take a look at it, it has this title in the Hebrew original, A Song of Ascents, as do all these 15 songs of ascents. But then it also adds here, of Solomon. Now, most people believe that Solomon was in fact the author of this song. Yet the Hebrew phrasing would allow the idea that this song was composed by David for Solomon. I'm going to consider Solomon to be the author in my explanation of the song, but I just want to suggest that too. Here, I believe that Solomon is really speaking in a powerful and poetic way about God's work in building houses, in building cities, and in building families. G. Campbell Morgan said this, thinking about this song as a whole. He said, the strength of the Hebrew people is in the past. All that remains of it today largely results from their keen sense which they ever cherished of the importance of the home and the family. The house, the city, labor, all are important to the conserving of the strength of the family. Now, it's interesting. If I could just make a comment on that line that I read to you from G. Campbell Morgan. When he was writing in the early part of the 20th century, he said the strength of the Hebrew people is in the past. He hadn't contemplated the establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948. He was looking at their strength as just being a past thing, but he said that strength was preserved by their emphasis on the home and family, which is reflected in this beautiful, powerful psalm. Psalm 127. Again, it's a work that speaks about God's building work in houses, in cities, and in families. Here we go. Verse 1. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. Solomon understood that the work of man has its place. Yet, the work of man is of little ultimate use without the work and blessing of God upon it. Without God's work and blessing, we labor in vain. Again, look at those lines from verse 1. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Again, to quote G. Campbell Morgan, he said, no house building is successful which leaves God out of account. How we have seen men build only houses with great care and at great cost, only to see them crumble to pieces because God was with them. No, when it says, unless the Lord builds the house, we're talking more about a structure made with bricks and mortar and wood and all the rest of it. No, we're talking about what God builds in a home, so to speak. It's very important for us to understand, without the Lord, there comes nothing but vanity. Things are destroyed. Things pass away.
G. Campbell Morgan said those wonderful words about this importance of building and having God's preeminent idea in what we do and what we build, that we can never forget God. James Montgomery Boyce, in his commentary on Psalm 127, says something similar. He says, a Latin motto says, nisi dominus frusta. It comes from the first words of this psalm, and it means, without the Lord, frustration. Boyce says, that is the motto of the city of Edinburgh, Scotland, appearing on its crest, and it is affixed to the city's official documents. It could be attached to the lives of many who are trying to live their lives without the Almighty. It's true. Without the Lord, frustration. Now, when we read these words, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. And we've been considering that he means house here in verse 1 in a literal sense, a physical structure. It's possible that the house being built here is actually a family. In the Old Testament, it was used at times to speak of a family as being a house. Even today, as we could speak of a prominent family as being a dynasty or a house of this or a house of that. Either way, we get the point. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. Now, the watchman has his role, and he should stay awake. We're not here to praise the sleeping watchman, no. But without God's work and blessing, that is what is needed to truly guard the city. Now, when we consider just verse 1 here, unless the Lord builds the house, unless the Lord guards the city, it's especially meaningful to us that Solomon wrote this psalm. Because Solomon knew what it was like to both build a house and to guard a city. Wise Solomon understood that though God welcomed, and we could say even commanded, human effort and participation, God's work and blessing were more important. Yes, the builder needs to do his job, as does the watchman over the city, yet they must do it all along the way, trusting the Lord. Again, to quote G. Campbell Morgan, you can tell I like his perspective on this psalm a lot. He said, these would be splendid words to cut into granite over the entrance of all of our homes and to emblazon in gold at the meeting places of those in civic authority. Better still, let them be written in the heart of those who make homes and guard and govern cities. We need these words, yes, publicly seen, but more importantly, hidden in the heart. Now, verse 2, he's going to talk about the vanity of reliance upon the strength of man. Verse 2, it is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he gives his beloved sleep. What a powerful statement. It is vain for you to rise up early. Now, I don't know about you, but I like to get up early. Some of my most productive work is done early. I do a lot of my Bible teaching here for this platform in this particular room early in the morning. And we gather that Solomon did not speak against getting up early and working hard. After all, if you turn to the book of Proverbs, you'll see many of Solomon's Proverbs praise the hard worker who rises early. If you want an example of that, go to Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 11. But from the first verse of this psalm, we understand that Solomon intended the trust that many people put in their own hard work. That's what is vain. The anxiety that people cling on to, that shows a reliance on self, not God. And so in that sense, it is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows. Again, he's not promoting laziness. He's not saying, sleep in. Don't work too late. Just take it easy all the time. No, he's saying it's vain for you to get up early and work hard. It's vain for you to stay up late and work hard. It's vain for you to do all those things and to forget about God, The only thing you'll gain from that is the bread of sorrows. Why don't you go and get some of the sleep that God gives to his beloved? The commentator writer Thomas Manton had a good definition of what the bread of sorrows were. He says it's living a life of misery and labors, fretting at our own disappointments, eaten up with envy at the advancement of others, afflicted overmuch with losses and wrongs. There is no end of all their labors. No, listen, we need to trust God. Yes, work hard, but all your hard work without trusting God, it has the potential to bring great sorrow in your life. You'll just be eating the bread of sorrows. As we said before, take a look at the last line of verse 2. Look at what's preferred. Just get the sleep that God gives to his beloved. Now, men who are affected by reliance on their own hard work and experience, they experience the anxiety that often comes with it. God's blessing is to give his beloved ones sleep. They can be at peace knowing that God's hand is at work, that God's eye is watching even as they sleep. Now, very interesting here in verse 2, that phrase, for so he gives his beloved sleep. There are more than a couple of commentators who believe, again, James Montgomery Boyce is one of them, that this may be a hidden or even cryptic reference to Solomon himself. He gives his beloved sleep. In Hebrew, the words are actually connected to a title or a name that was given to Solomon in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 25, Jedidah, meaning beloved of Jehovah. Maybe that's who he's referring to there. But again, whether or not it refers to Solomon, we long for it to refer to us. We want the blessed sleep that God gives to his beloved. And if you're having sleep problems, which many people do, take this verse before the Lord. Say, Lord, you say here in your word that you give your beloved sleep. I know that in Jesus Christ I am beloved by you. Lord, I ask that tonight you would give me sleep. F.B. Meyer said of this idea, he said, begone, dull, worrying care. Let me rest, sweet faith and hope. Close my eyes and still my heart. Jesus, give me sleep. And in sleeping, give me my heart's desire that I may awake and be satisfied. It's beautiful, isn't it? Now, let's go on to verse 3 and take a look here at what he has to say about blessing upon the family. To introduce us, let me read you something from Bishop Horn, that Anglican commentator from a few hundred years ago. He said, the labors of mankind, first in building houses and cities, and then in guarding and securing their possessions, are undergone not with a view to themselves alone, but to their families, which they would establish and perpetuate. In other words, he's considering the work that's spoken of in the first 3 verses, or the first 2 verses, I should say, the work of building houses and guarding cities. Now, those are great works. Wonderful to build a house, wonderful to guard a city, but why do we do that? It's so that our family can have a safe, secure place to live and to thrive. So very fittingly, he comes to the subject of family now in verse 3. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Solomon considered the wisdom of trusting God in building a house, that's in verse 1, but he also understood that really a home is built by more than having, straight beams and good bricks and wood and all the rest of it. He called everybody to behold something. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. Children are a blessing. I mean, after all, any person would ask, especially an ancient Jew, why are you building a house? What's the good of it? The house is for a family. Why are the watchmen doing their work of protecting the city? Why do they do it? They do it to protect my family. Back then in the ancient world, even to the present day, the family was and is the most basic, fundamental unit. It is the most important element of society. When family breaks down, society will break down. Spurgeon said, this is done through children. He says here, he gives children not as a penalty nor as a burden, but as a favor. They are a token for good if men know how to receive them and educate them. They are doubtful blessings only because we are doubtful people. No, children are a blessing. Children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Sadly, though Solomon had, and this is according to 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 3, Solomon had 700 wives, and he had 300 concubines. Do you know that we only know of one of his specific descendants? Perhaps Solomon knew very little of this reward. Now, I believe Solomon had more than one child, but we're only really told of one. As the Puritan commentator John Trapp said, he said, this last was a fit lesson for Solomon, who, by so many wives and concubines, left but one only son that we read of, and him not the wisest. Isn't it interesting? Solomon here is recognizing that many children are a reward, and Solomon had the potential to have hundreds of children, literally. We only read of one. As Derek Kidner observed, like much of Solomon's wisdom, the lessons of this psalm, relevant as they were to his situation, were mostly lost on him. His building, both literal and figurative, became reckless. You can see that in 1 Kings chapter 9. Solomon's kingdom eventually became a ruin. You can see that in 1 Kings 11:11. And his marriages became a disastrous denial of God. You can see that in 1 Kings 11 as well. Solomon could sing about this. Solomon could give us some wonderfully wise proverbs about this. But sadly, he never really lived this principle in abundance. The man who said to us, behold, children are a heritage to the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward, he knew very little of that reward, at least that we know of, at least that the scriptures explain to us. Now, verses 4 and 5, the two concluding verses of this psalm. Solomon says, like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. Here, Solomon likens children to being arrows in the hand of a warrior. And in many ways, children are like arrows in the hand of a warrior. First of all, Solomon's thinking what a blessing it is to have children. Well, the more arrows you put in the hand of a warrior, the more fighting he can do, the more strength he can project. And so more is to be preferred rather than less. So that's one idea there, but that's not the only idea at all. You could say that in many ways, children are indeed like arrows in the hand of a warrior. Number one, just like arrows, children must be carefully shaped and formed. Secondly, just like arrows, children must be guided with skill and strength. When an arrow sets out to do its work, it has to be guided by a skillful person. Like children, arrows must be given care or they will not fly straight. Like arrows, children must be aimed and given direction. They will not find direction on their own. Children, like arrows, are, in some respects, only launched once. For the most part, when that soldier's in battle fighting with a bow and arrow, each arrow gets launched once. And then, in some sense, just like arrows, children are an extension of the warrior's strength and accomplishment. And finally, just like arrows, children have the potential for much good or great evil. Now, again, notice, arrows don't happen by accident. As far as we know, a branch never just fell off of a tree and gave itself to be a truly useful arrow. No, the archer must gather those sticks and must carefully, attentively shape them. They need to be made smooth by grace. And then, as Bishop Horn said, they need to be ready winged with duty and love to fly to the mark. They need to be polished and keen to grace. And they need to maintain the cause of their parents, who serve as the archers to launch those arrows. As Boyce understood, it's vain to build a house without God. It's vain to watch over a city without depending on God. But it's even more foolish to try to raise a family without God. So, children are like arrows, it says, in the hand of a warrior. Verse 5, happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. If children are a reward, that's what it says in verse 3, then there's great blessing and happiness in having many children. If you have a lot of children, in some sense, it's work, it's a burden. But in biblical times, as well as in our own days, there is great blessing that comes from it. Now look, I understand everybody's situation is different. There are some people who have a different calling in life altogether. But in general, please take those words seriously. I say, in general, Christians should have a lot of babies. The world needs more children raised in godly homes. The world needs more arrows that will be skillfully shaped and launched into the world. It's a blessing, not only for the family, but for the world, for believers who long to raise their children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, to have a quiver full of those arrows. And again, I understand each individual before God has to figure this out between them and the Lord. But in general, speaking in a very general sense, it's good for Christians to have many children. As Spurgeon recognized, he said, a quiver may be small and yet full, and then the blessing is obtained. In any case, Spurgeon said, we may be sure that a man's life consists not in the abundance of children that he possesses. You can't automatically say that if you have many children, you're going to have a blessed, wonderful life. The two don't go together. No, we need to figure these things out before the Lord. But in general, it's a wonderful thing. I remember reading in Spurgeon's Treasury of David, he gives the story of a man named Joseph Hall. It's really a touching story. I'll read you. These are the words of Joseph Hall. He says, I remember a great man coming into my house at Waltham and seeing all my children standing in the order of their age and stature. And the great man said, these are they that make rich men poor. But he straight received the answer from me, nay, my lord, these are they that make a poor man rich, for there is not one of these whom we would part with for all your wealth. What a great answer to an arrogant man who considered children a source of poverty instead of enrichment. There's an old German proverb that I read in a commentary that says, many children make many prayers, and many prayers bring much blessing. Well, that's true if nothing else is. Now notice here, verse 5, I'll read it again. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. The gate of an ancient city was a place of business and justice. This verse speaks of the children of the godly having places of prominence and influence in their communities. And so this is a wonderful idea here that the children of the godly, God can give them places of prominence and blessing for the community. Again, I believe that it is a blessing not only for the family to have more children, but it is ultimately a blessing for the community to have more people in it that were raised in good and godly homes. Well, let's consider now, how might we see that Psalm 127 points to Jesus? Well, I would suggest this way. We can see that Jesus is the builder of the house and the guard of the city. Verse 1 says this, I'll read it to you again. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. Now, Ephesians and 1 Peter tell us that the people of God are the house that Jesus builds. And the book of Revelation tells us of the heavenly city, the new Jerusalem that is guarded by God. All of this collectively, all these New Testament thoughts connect with the idea that in Jesus, we are part of God's family, and we can be considered God's children in a particular way. We are children by adoption, but still we are in God's quiver. We are God's family. Jesus is the builder of the house. Jesus is the guard of the city. And in Jesus, we are in the family of God. What a beautiful and powerful thought. Let me
I hope you enjoyed that. I thought it was
conclude.
well said. What stuck out to you? Is there some place, something he said where you go, I agree with that? Somebody play the music?
I like the second verse where he said, you know, if you rise up early in vain and go late to rest, you know, about you're doing that not as if working for the Lord, but in your own efforts, you know, like you can get all the work done if you just get up earlier and stay later, but that's not necessarily God's will, you know. And I worked in a corporate job for years, putting my family second, you know, because I thought that, I mean, that's what I was supposed to do in order to make a lot of money. I'm supposed to work extra hard and you know, stay late and all that kind of stuff instead of relying on God to provide, you know. And ultimately, when I finally did, you know, surrender and tell him, God, I can't keep doing this. You know, I need you to show me what I should be doing. It took me to a completely different line of work. And it was completely obvious that God was telling me and David that this is where I want you. This is what I want you to do. And I'm going to bless you because you finally turned back.
You're the only one I've ever known to be in that situation, Roxanne. Can anybody else relate? Yes, sir.
I found myself talking about, unless the Lord builds the house, I know you folks don't. I know you folks have a building program in mind in the future. And I'm thinking, Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church. Upon the rock of the confession that Peter made, and he was the Son of God. So I find myself in this when we think about building. Unless
And I come to the family for peace and for comfort. Wednesday nights, I just get up and get down here. That's where I got to be. Because I can sit here and I can breathe. And I'm amongst like-minded people, and we love each other, right? If you're a visitor here and you haven't come to this place before, you'll see that this family loves each other. You probably won't get out of here without a hug or two. That's what we're about. That's what we're going to be about. What else stuck out? Everybody get plenty of sleep? Y'all are good? Some of you are sleeping now. Ready?
The same verse that Roxanne pointed out, one thing that caught my attention as he was reading it, I thought, well, the translation says that a little bit differently in verse 2. One translation, a common translation says, don't rise early and stay up late. God's going to give you rest. He's going to give you sleep. But the alternate translation, and I've seen there's maybe a half dozen or so translations that say it differently. It said he's going to give to you even as you sleep. So sleep isn't the thing he's giving you. He's giving you all the stuff you're toiling for, even while you're resting. Right? So it's vain to start early and stay up late and gather stuff. He's going to give you what you need, even in your sleep. It's a different variation, an interesting variation on that.
Maybe that happens when our expectations change. All of a sudden, I know I have what I need. It's not what I want. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking about the way God trained the Jews. He made them lay that their hills had to be fallow every 7 years for them to trust. And, and then every so often, every 50 years, their fields were fallow for 2 years in a row. And they had to trust that they would have enough to eat, without doing any work. And, the people all around them probably worked, 24/7 every day. And he made them rest 1 day a week and trust God that he would provide for them.
It's amazing how the things that God made people do is always good for them. Anybody else? Have more children. How about that one?
Too late.
Trusting God.
Let's say your youth.
Do what?
Let's say your youth.
Let's say you. Yes. Well, what about that concept? I really like that concept. We need more children. We need more Christian children raised. Now it's just more than marketing schemes. The more I get right, just add more, and more Christian, right? Seems to be true, David.
I was reading something recently that the Amish or Mennonite population doubles every year because of having more children. The average is 8 per family.
Average is 8 per family. David's saying the Amish, he was reading, but it was the Amish or the Mennonite people double their population every 20 years because of this having more children.
Like the concept from brought up the size of the quiver.
What size of quiver?
And just build the quiver, start dropping arrows. That's not very much good for anybody. Or your
Yes. I really like the arrow explanation that he gave. Child is the arrow. You've got what's the other called, the feathers? The fletching. You got the fletching and you got the point. The point may be the mom, the fletching may be the dad, and it's all, everybody works together to make that arrow straight. As a matter of fact, today I've got an apple and Howie's holding, and I've got my bow. We're gonna see how my kids shoot. And then the last part he said sort of got me. You may only shoot it once. How good's your fletching? How good's your tip? How good's that arrow? You may only shoot it once. Parents, I wish we had more young parents. Parents, listen, you may only shoot it once. Mr. heard Ryan or not. He says you can have all the right stuff, but you got to train to have even if you have the right stuff. And I'm going to highlight Ryan here. I know about every other day he shoots about 100 arrows at his house, not at his house. Yes.
We're thinking about the bow and arrow and we're hoping the arrow is only going to do as much as the bow is able to do. So if you have a great arrow, then it can't cut the bow. That's almost like it's almost like being involved in being able to
Said you can have a great arrow, but you got to have a good bow or a great bow to make that arrow go. So I think that's a dig on parents. Not a dig, I'm kidding. Yeah. You got to have good parents.
Strength of the arrow and speed of the arrow is, just, you gotta have a good bow, but you also gotta have a strong person to pull the bow back. You ever tried to pull one of those big ones back, I tell you what, it takes a lot.
It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of work to get to where you can do that yourself, right? Like I said, I went down a lot of paths and a lot of stuff I'd like to talk about, but there's no time. One thing I did look for is I was wondering if I could find how a Jewish group sang Psalm 127. And I found this. And this got my attention because I enjoy a good song, I enjoy good harmony. These gentlemen are singing Psalm 127. Of course, it's in Hebrew. If you're a Hebrew, please join in. But let's listen to part. Listen, it's about 4 or 5 minutes. You can play half of it, or whatever. And, go ahead.
השם לא יבנה Shalom levoy naboy, Hashem lo yishmari, Shav shokat shoy mai. Hashem lo yivne bayis, Shalom levoy naboy, Hashem lo yishmari, Shav shokat shoy mai. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, Shalom levoy naboy, Im Hashem lo yishmori, Shav shokat shoy mai. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, Shalom levoy naboy, Im Hashem lo yishmori, Shav shokat shoy mai. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoy mai Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoy mai Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoy mai Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoy mai Yisroel. Hashem lo yivne bayis, Shalom lo boy naboy, Im Hashem lo yishmori, Shav shokat shoy mai. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, Shalom lo boy naboy, Im Hashem lo yishmori, Shav shokat shoy mai. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, Shalom lo boy naboy, Im Hashem lo yishmori, Shav shokat shoy mai. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, Shalom lo boy naboy, Im Hashem lo yishmori, Shav shokat shoy mai. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoy mai Yisroel.